and kick us off. Good afternoon and welcome to Open Classroom. Good evening to folks joining us from Africa. My name is Janet Gillow. I'm the Director of Professional Development for the Brown School, Washington University in St. Louis. So happy to have you as part of today's program. For our audience joining us on Zoom throughout this presentation, you are muted. We can't see or hear you. We can't call on raised hands either, but we love to hear from you. So the chat feature is enabled. Please feel free to join the conversation and share your questions as we go. I want to thank and acknowledge my friend and colleague, Laura Peer, the training manager for the International Center for Child Health and Development. She will be in the chat, helping to make sure your voice is represented, respond to questions that you have, and then also you'll be hearing from her after the program as she shares some resources and an evaluation. So be looking for a message from Laura. Here at Open Classroom, as we start 2021, the Brown School is producing a robust slate of virtual programming for you. Much of it, like today's program, made possible because of the collaborations we have with other institutions. So just to forecast a little bit what's coming your way, we'd love to have you join. Next Tuesday, that's February 2nd, Hasmi Chakarian, who's with Webster University, is going to be talking to us about understanding the pandemic as a shared traumatic experience. We also have a lot of wonderful Black History Month events coming up in February, so you'll definitely want to check those out. And then this series that we're doing in collaboration with colleagues, Africa Speaks, Smart Africa, and the International Center for Child Health and Development. Our next offering in this series is on Tuesday, February 16th, when Dr. Susan Whitty of Columbia University is going to be talking to us about reviewing the effectiveness of combination microfinance and HIV prevention interventions for women engaged in sex work. So if you're interested in these topics, please do visit our website and sign up for future offerings. But now we're ready to get started with today's program, and it is my great pleasure to introduce Mary McKay, the Nydorf Family and Centene Corporation Dean of the Brown School. Welcome, Dean Mary.
Wonderful. Thank you, Janet. And hopefully you can hear me okay. It is my privilege to welcome you to this session with our very good friend and colleague, Theresa. Thank you for coming. Thank you for colleagues that are coming in through Rwanda via this virtual world that we are living in. So my privilege is to really just say a word about the importance of the work that you're going to hear today and the platform that we're trying to create here. So you'll hear from Dr. Fred next, that will talk with you about the work of ICHAD and the group, the vibrant group of faculty and staff and students who are working both here in the US and also vibrantly in Uganda, but also in other countries, Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, to really open up opportunities for young people and their families. So the work of ICHAD, vibrant research group, really trying to make a difference, as is Theresa and her colleagues are going to talk about today. This work is also supported by the McDonald Academy and an effort that we call African Speaks. And the way that we have tried to model this series is to really be sure that we are supporting and elevating the voices of our colleagues on the continent and the collaboration that they have with US-based institutions. So thank you for sharing with us your wisdom. I'm so sorry that I won't be able to be with you the whole time, but the beautiful thing about Janet Open Classrooms is I'll be able to watch it on YouTube. So with that, Dr. Fred, I'll turn it over to you for some opening remarks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dean Mary. Thank you so much, Theresa. Thank you so much, Jean. And thank you so much, Vincent, for really making the time to speak with us. For some of you who don't know me, my name is Fred Sawamala. I'm on the faculty here at the Brown School, and I also have the pleasure and honor of directing the International Center for Child Health and Development and Smart Africa, which are co-sponsoring today's presentation together with the McDonald Academy, the African Initiative, and the Institute for Public Health. So, and we always have these presentations. Africa Speaks will have another series of these kinds of presentations, and so please stay tuned. ICHAD also has series of these kinds of presentations. please stay tuned. What we are trying to do is really to bring the work that's happening on the African continent, the work that is being done by our colleagues on the continent, but also the work which is being done by our colleagues here doing work on the continent. And hopefully some of these meetings will kind of lead to collaborations, new ideas. That's really what we are really interested in, and also be able to share knowledge and brainstorm. So we are very grateful that our first Africa Speaks series for this year is being kicked off by Theresa and Jean and Vincent and Jean are coming in directly from Rwanda. So just a few words about Theresa. Theresa and I have known, Professor Theresa Betancourt and I have known each other for quite some time. I got to know her when she was still at Harvard, and now she's at Boston College, and she directs the research program on children and diversity at Boston College. She has done a great deal of work around children in diversity, around issues around child development, around the psychosocial consequences of concentrated adversity on children. She has published extensively in JAMA, in the top tier journals that you can think about. And she has practiced in Uganda, so that makes me, of course, excited. And she has practiced also in Rwanda. That's what this presentation is about. And then Professor Vincent is at University of Rwanda, in their College of Medicine and Health Sciences as an associate professor. And she works closely with Professor Theresa Betancourt on the same issues around mental health and around children who have gone through adversity. And of course, there is no better country for us to learn from than Rwanda, at least in the East African region. So we are very grateful that Professor Vincent Sezibera is here. Then we also have Jean Marie Vianney Havugimana. Don't worry if I mispronounce your name, they mispronounce mine all the time. So you are in good company with me. But he's a project manager who has done lots of work around project management and evaluation. He has over 10 years of doing this kind of work. So really, this is a diverse group of people combining academia and practitioners and really people who move programs to scale. So thank you so much, Theresa. I pass this on to you. Again, thanks for doing this.
Great. Well, we're honored to be here and be a part of the series, and just really appreciate the chance to share this long-term work in collaboration. So I'm going to talk today, and Vincent and Jean-Marie, all of us together, about implementation science strategies for scaling out a home visiting program called Sugira Muryango, to promote early childhood development, nurturing care, but also prevent violence in families affected by extreme poverty in Rwanda. So next slide. So I'm going to give a little overview just on our research program on children in adversity, some of its conceptual drivers, and how over the years we've moved from mixed methods research, observational studies, to then thinking about implementation science. And not just stopping at the does it work question about interventions, but how can we scale, sustain quality, and reach more vulnerable families? And our best example of that in Rwanda is the Sugira Muryango project, where we've moved from 2 pilots now to a recent cluster randomized trial and a new initiative called the Play Collaborative, which is a multi-level strategy to scale the intervention now to 10,000 households in poverty in 3 districts in Rwanda, in partnership with the national government, the district level government, and local and even village level leaders and stakeholders. And we'll also talk a little bit about how we've had to adapt to COVID-19 and some of the innovations around use of technology, and how we've adapted some of our cross-site capacity building to digital platforms, and then where we hope to go next. So this piece of work published in The Lancet was really the shot heard around the world when we talk about child development. As Sally Grantham McGregor and colleagues published back in 2007, over 200 million children under the age of 5 are not fulfilling their developmental potential. So when it comes to countries wanting to move into middle income or high income status, advance human capital, we're not doing a good job for children, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, where you see a large concentration of children who face a number of developmental risks, and research indicates that they're not on track to achieve their full potential. And we see this concentration of adversity also in regions that are affected by armed conflict. That if you look at a range of different statistics, this is from UNICEF data on projected neonatal mortality by 2030, if we followed current trends, you see a lot of those that are struggling also have a history of conflict in the recent future: Central African Republic, Pakistan, Somalia, Afghanistan, South Sudan, Nigeria, Sudan, Sierra Leone, where we also work. So we have to think about the compound adversity and the ways in which several risk factors oftentimes are colliding when we think about underdevelopment and risk to children and families. So when we talk about advancing any one child's development or mental health, we're always going all the way back to models like Yuri Bronfenbrenner and thinking developmentally, ecologically. We're thinking about the role of time and those multiple systems that are interrelated: the individual system, ontogenetic development, age, gender, temperament, intelligence, the child's genetic history, but also what's going on at the level of the caregivers, the microsystem, the nature of parent-child attachment relationships, caregiver mental health, resources in the family, and then the broader system of the community, the relationships between the household and access to informal supports, formal services that are provided, opportunities to advance oneself for school, extended family, religious figures, coaches, mentors in the community, and then the larger macro system, the political, the historical context, including the cultural beliefs about what adversity people have faced, how they think about reconciliation, healing, and moving forward. And all of these sort of multi-systemic elements shape either processes of risk or processes of resilience. So our research program on children in adversity was established back in 2006, and we had very early partnerships in Rwanda to identify factors that contribute to risk as well as resilience in children and families that face adversity globally, and to take a strengths-based focus, not just focus on deficits or trauma or problems, but also what are the strengths that are inherent in this culture, in this setting, that can be leveraged in intervention models, and to develop evidence-based intervention strategies to close that no-do gap, that we know a lot about the science of early adversity, trauma, deprivation, its effects on early brain development, its effects on mental health over the life course, but we're not doing our highest quality work in low resource settings, and that's where we need to be bringing our A game. And to really help develop higher quality and effective programs and policies in low resource settings. And that means around the world, globally, through our many partnerships in different low resource settings, but also in the United States, where we work with underserved populations, including refugee families who have resettled. So as a lab, we take a mixed methods approach. Oftentimes, almost always, we're outsiders to the culture and the setting. And so we need to learn from the ground up, how do local people think about constructs such as appropriate parent-child relationships, expectations? What does attachment look like? What are the protective processes that matter in the setting, rather than assuming that things that we conceptualize in the West or in the United States or the UK or other countries apply as we move into new settings. And to think about, if we're looking at mental health, how is it conceptualized and defined here? What are the terms local people use? How can we arrive at good measures that truly capture these things? And because we've collected qualitative data on both processes of risk, but also protective processes, use that information to select our measures, adapt the measures through forward translation using local terms we've learned about, and even sometimes having to create new measures for constructs that we've learned about that maybe were not well captured. And if at all possible, conducting validation studies to make sure our measures are working well, and also to inform our interventions with a strengths focus, because we've learned about what matters for people to do well despite significant risk, to look at those active ingredients that we include in intervention models that can be deployment focused. So they're fit to context, they make sense in the culture, they can be supported by local systems, they can be scalable, that we're always thinking about going to scale in how we design our interventions in the first place. And this is a model we've really iterated across a range of different projects and settings. So we have projects that have sort of spanned the gamut in some of these big themes. So on the topic of children affected by armed conflict, as you may have heard from Dr. Fred at the beginning, we've also worked on a longitudinal study of war-affected youth, many of them former child soldiers in Sierra Leone, that started back in 2002, following these young people as they mature in mixed methods, data collection, qualitative and quantitative, and now even looking at their lives as parents, using all of that observational research to design and test interventions, including a group mental health intervention we call the Youth Readiness Intervention that has been a part of our implementation science research in Sierra Leone, linking it first to school programs and now to youth employment and youth livelihood programs in Sierra Leone, and now some intergenerational work. Some of our early work on the intergenerational impact of war has led to an adaptation of the model we'll talk about today, Sugira Muryango. Now, Sugira Muryango grew out of work on parenting in the context of another form of adversity, which is HIV and AIDS, where originally we had a grant from the National Institutes of Mental Health to adapt Bill Beardsley's family-based preventative intervention to the context of HIV/AIDS in Rwanda, and finding a model that could be delivered by lay people in the community if they got excellent training and supervision. And then as the political will around early childhood development really advanced in Rwanda, and Vincent will tell you a bit about that, we were asked by the World Bank and our partners in government to consider not just parenting for school-age children affected by HIV, but a more broad-based parenting intervention for families living in extreme poverty. And so we brought together care for child development with the parenting intervention we had done, but no longer having the specific focus on HIV. And the result was Sugira Muryango. We'll tell you a little bit more about that model as we go forward. And then, as I mentioned, we also work domestically. So from the early years of our program back starting in 2005, we've had partnership with African diaspora communities resettled here in the United States. And so we've had funding from the National Institutes of Minority Health and Health Disparities in community-based participatory research with Somali Bantu and Somali majority families in developing and co-creating a parenting intervention that's done by refugees for refugee families as they resettle. And now we've expanded that to Bhutanese refugees as well in the United States. So what we love about the Brown School and the WashU team is they're really at the vanguard of implementation science. And we have, after my early participation in the Implementation Research Institute at WashU, I've really shifted a lot of my own work, not just to stop at RCTs and say, look, it works, figure out how to do it, but really that we're thinking very early on about designing for implementation in the future. So when I say deployment focus, we're thinking about who are the delivery systems? How is this going to be delivered in the future at greater scale? What's the fit to the population of beneficiaries in terms of acceptability, feasibility, what's going to remove barriers? And how can we really explicitly test strategies to improve training, improve quality as we go, and think about the factors that may shape that as we start to scale, and how we can blend our research to look at questions of effectiveness, does it work, with implementation strategies at the same time. And that means using more hybrid designs in our research. So as you know, and these are slides that I got from David Chambers and some from Greg Ahrens, that when we have an evidence-based intervention, it's only as good as whether or not it's truly used, adopted. If the providers are actually trained to deliver it, who are, deliver it with competence in the way it was intended to be done, that the quality is maintained, and that people actually receive it. And we assume that if you have a 50% threshold drop at each step, you have very little actual benefit if you're having voltage drop. So the next slide sort of talks about some of the contributors to voltage drop. There are lots of places to lose impact during implementation. You can have the drift that comes as you expand use, that people start to maybe not do all the parts of it or do it in a different way. Maybe you don't have a lot of mechanisms to think about fidelity and the quality of your delivery as you go, or you haven't really thought about fidelity to the evidence-based practice. That maybe you train people and there's turnover and loss of professionals who can continue the practice at a high level of quality, or you just train and hope that the training was good enough and you'll get there if you keep a focus on that. And so with implementation science, we're going to really start to shift the focus and attend to those issues of maintaining quality and fidelity as we scale. this brings us into the example today of why this really matters, in especially working in settings like Rwanda that have gone through a history not just of HIV epidemic or pockets of poverty, but also the history of the genocide in the country, where issues of intergenerational violence are quite important to consider. So we know that gaps in early childhood development can be really costly for societies, for individuals, and for families. And from other research, and this comes from a World Bank workshop, we know that children who are physically stunted or falling behind in their cognitive, linguistic, or socio-emotional development are much more likely to enter first grade late. So they have real challenges in that transition to formal schooling. Once they're in school, they may have less performance than other kids. They may repeat grades or drop out of school even before they complete primary school. We see even long-term effects for poor ECD or exposure to adversity to later adult physical health and problems with mental health across the life course. And also it means children can be at greater risk of high-risk behavior, transactional sex, substance abuse, and ultimately be less productive and have lower earnings over the life course. So if you're a government or you're a development actor and thinking about where to make these investments, starting early and thinking about investing in children early really matters. So we had been writing about the intergenerational effect of war when I talked about our work in Sierra Leone. I mentioned the longitudinal study. And we had been pointing very early on to the need to not just have interventions that focus on children or focus on youth, which we do, but also start a lot earlier and think about the home environment and think about parent-child relationships, and especially when you have countries that have gone through trauma and gone through communal violence, what that means for parenting in the next generation. When people have lost their support systems, they've been exposed to trauma, we know it leads to problems in mental health, emotion regulation, what that means for the parent-child relationship, and also violence in the household that can affect partners and can affect young and developing children. So that brings us to Sugira Muryango, and I'm going to now invite my Rwandan colleagues to give you a little more background about the context. So Jean-Marie or Vincent, I don't know who's taking over next, but I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Vincent. Will be go first, and then we'll be coming later.
Great.
Thank you, Jean-Marie. Thank you, Teresa, and colleagues. Yeah, the Center for Mental Health is one of the units we have within the College of Medicine and Health Sciences, which is also one of the colleges in the University of Rwanda. This center was established in 2015 with the main purpose of bringing together all the colleagues working in the domain of mental health so that we can look at the mental health from the different corners, from the bioanatomy, from the psyche, social environment, public health, and be able to further research in a sense of gathering evidences that can inform policymakers or even training programs. We are also interested in developing professional training to I will say to support those who are practicing in the domain of mental health, also working with government and non-government institutions, both sharing the knowledge we learn from research, but also learning from what is being developed outside the university. So members in this center will include psychiatrists, psychiatric nurses, clinical psychologists like myself, social workers, and more, even public health. We are lucky because the Boston College, and I do thank Theresa and the team because they played a great role in this. The University of Rwanda has signed a memorandum of understanding to collaborate with the Boston College so that we can promote research and capacity building. We are now happy because a number of projects are running in partnership between us, the Center for Mental Health, which is the implementing unit within the University of Rwanda, and Boston College. We are putting together a number of ideas, but also bringing together all the researchers in the domain of mental health so that we can look at mental health from the different aspects, as I said. Next slide, please. Yeah, talking about Rwanda, we can see Rwanda from different angles. One, it is, we can say Rwanda is that small country landlocked between the different countries around Uganda, Burundi, Tanzania, DRC, with high density, because with a population around 12 million and above, with only 338 square kilometers. This is one of the very dense, in terms of density, country. We have a number of story of success in Rwanda, being from the child maternal health, being the economic growth. I think Rwanda is growing and prospering, and we are lucky because of the leadership we have and the industrialization. When we look at the literacy, we will see that most of the kids can access and go to school. But we don't forget the other issues that are really big challenges that can affect especially individuals, the child development, family functioning, and in turn how the family functioning will affect the child well-being and child development. Some of these challenges were listed by Theresa. Our recent history includes a lot of trauma and violence. And nowadays, when we look at the data, the prevalence rate of mental difficulties are also high, especially mood disorders like depression and anxiety-related disorders, especially the post-traumatic stress disorders, both in adults and in children. We also know that all these mental health difficulties will affect the way the parents will relate and interact with their kids, how that kind of historical trauma and violence will affect the family functioning, the child rearing, the parenting style. The recent report, the DHS report, was also reporting a quite concerning number of kids who are stunted for a number of reasons, and we cannot exclude probably the diet and the hygiene. All these are some of the challenges that affect the community, individuals, and the family development, the family functioning. And I do like this naming given to this project, Sugira Muryango, and I think probably my colleague Jamare will analyze on that, but Sugira Muryango in Kinyarwanda mean family, if I try to translate, it means family prosperity. When the family prospers, then the members also are healthy. And here we look at it from that global picture, saying how the family prosper and how that family functioning will affect members. Next slide. We are also happy given the focus and the importance given to the child development, the child well-being in Rwanda. There is a number of policies and strategies that are in place, the political will, but also structures that are in favor of the child development and child welfare. We used to have in the country what used to be known as the National Child Commission, And today, all the existing structures were measured, and we have the NCDA, which is the National Child Development Agency, that is in charge of looking at not only the policies, but also the strategies that can promote the child development, from the nutrition, hygiene, education, advocacy, and make sure the policies are also cross-cutting a number of social ministries. And to make sure the child is, I would say, protected, and the well-being of the kids on focus. Next slide. This last slide, I will be commenting one of the studies that were published, and I was happy to be part of the team. This study gave us the evidence that when the relationship between the parents and kids is improved, the children will benefit from that kind of positive relationship existing between parents and children. This paper was one of the papers published while working, of course, with Theresa, but the population was the population of children and parents affected by the HIV. But the conclusion from this paper clearly demonstrated that improving in the relationship, it will minimize the kids to develop a number of disorders, especially the depression. So the child will benefit from that positive relationship. And to mean, if we want to help children, we should improve in the family functioning. And what exactly? We should improve in that relationship between parents and children. And if you want to improve that relationship between parents and children, we should also look at how the parents themselves interact between themselves and also between parents and children. This is a promising evidence that also inspired a number of projects that are ongoing to go beyond that population of HIV affected and infected families, but also to extend and look at the other kind of families who are living in poverty and socioeconomic adversities, to include gender-based violence, intimate partner violence, domestic violence. How do we address all these global adversities to make sure we protect families, and in turn, we promote the children well-being? Thank you, and I hand up to you, Jean-Marie, for the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vincent, for giving me this opportunity. I think I'm just going to go fast compared to the time we already have. As Vincent just mentioned, when the Sugira Muryango started, we're also drawing our attention to some of the findings that has been conducted already in Rwanda. So especially referring to the Early Childhood Development and Family Services baseline conducted by Imbuto Foundation and also UNICEF Rwanda, as where they have been just trying to focus on some of the post interventions assessment to inform the targeted rollout of the national ECD program. So for your information, the government of Rwanda has developed a national ECD program in 2011, but referring to the findings of this study, the government of Rwanda has been able to adapt its policy and update it in 2016. So to make sure that the children of Rwanda are really receiving the comprehensive ECD, where the focus was just to assess first the household characteristics, caregivers practices, and child development, and as well as nutrition and health, where the stunting was really high up to this time, because the recent demographic health survey has revealed that 33% of the children are still stunting, which is really very high compared to the international or MOA, the whole recommendation stunting rate, which should be under 19. So, but the focus of Rwanda is just to be under 19 by 2024. So next. So this is some of the result that has been found during that baseline conducted in Rwanda about caregiving practices. And given that the child discipline is an integral part of child rearing across the world, it has been believed that children aged 0 to 11 months are exposed to any violence discipline, where 19.8% has just have this issue where caregivers have reported that they have at least used one violent discipline to them. But this case was really increasing to the children as the child grow up, where children of 24 to 35 months were really exposed to any violence. This is the percentage, 8.7%, which is really, it's very high. Because this is the period which is critical to children when the children have already started doing some movement, just wanting to play. But since parents were not having some limited knowledge toward how they have to discipline their children, they're really using this violent discipline. Another finding that has revealed, given the traditional beliefs, and not only here in Africa or in Rwanda, some caregivers were perceiving that physical punishment are really necessary, which is represented by 34.4%. So this is really showing that there is a need, like different partners, to come and start addressing this really emerging issues of not just knowing what alternative discipline that can be offered to the children in a case maybe the children want make a mistake. So next, that is where we have just figured out how Sugira Muryango can help us to achieve some of those challenges. Considering the Sugira Muryango program, as Vincent mentioned, the word was drawn for the family strengthening intervention. Given the objectives and also the importance of this program, that is where I have been able to see that, okay, if we can just give the local name like Sugira Muryango, because when you meant Sugira Muryango, I just referring to have the holistic and also the unit of the family at once to make sure that the child well-being development are really tackled. So Sugira Muryango now is targeting families in extreme poverty, especially those in Ubudehe 1, considering the social categorization of Rwanda, which called Ubudehe. So those families are not the entire population in Ubudehe 1, because we also have to target those families having children from birth to 36 months. So the Sugira Muryango program is a support responsive parenting to promote ECD, prevent violence through active coaching, and then further engagement. And this is the program is really unique because it's really done in the home, where we reach those people in the home where they are living, and then we offer the active coaching through the 12 sessions that Sugira Muryango is just providing. The content of Sugira Muryango is standard because it has been grown from the Who Cares for Child Development, especially in the content of early stimulation, nutrition, and hygiene, but which makes this program to be a comprehensive, as we said, that it's also helping to prevent violence. It's also involved some component around problem solving, conflict resolution, stress management to address risk in the family violence. And also this program is also navigating from formal and informal resources and support through referrals, because we know that we're just working with families who could not, maybe there are some of the services the program is providing, but later on we realize that there are also some of the other services that are needed to them to make sure that the child is just getting the holistic development. Our program is also flexible to all type of families, whether you're headed household, where single-headed household, where it can be applied even to all, category of people, regardless even the category 1 we're just targeting, which are the category in the extreme poverty. The further engagement is really emphasized. I know that in Africa, most, especially in Rwanda, men are having a lot of work and also busy to generate income for their families, but we try to be flexible in scheduling so that men can also be part of our intervention and also be ready to participate in the sessions. Our program is also offering 15-minute play activities using the homemade toy during each visit done in the home. So we have realized that Sugira Muryango is really complementary to other ECD services being provided in the community, especially given the government commitment toward this sector of early childhood development. Next. So how have you tried to reach out the hard to reach? So this idea came when we started just linking our program with other existing government programs like the Cash for Work programs, which is now normally known as VUP or Visual Umurenge program. This is the Rwandan flagship social protection program for vulnerable families, where they tend to give work to them and then they have to generate income from that public works that are being conducted in their communities. And given the goals of this program, we have been just seeing a link between our program's goals and also to the government, to this government existing program. You know that the goal of this VUP was just to reduce the extreme poverty. And then we cannot just make sure that we are reducing extreme poverty while just maybe having many children with developmental delays. So this should have a long-term impact if not addressed as soon as possible. That is where we see that it is really having the link between our program goals and also the government existing program, especially VUP goals. We have just seen that it's also promoted gender equality, where we have been seeing, okay, how can you just promote ECD, making it to be a shared responsibility between men and females. So this is what we have been just seeing, that it's also have a link between. From then, we have been able just to create a win-win benefit, because working with the VUP has allowed our program to identify and recruit families, because we have been referring to the list from the VUP and share the vision with the government, link the referrals to the networks, because with the other existing services in the community that those beneficiaries were just looking for the holistic development of their children. We're also linking them to those networks in the community, whether NGOs, whether faith-based organization. And also it's allowed our program to also think around the sustainability, which just comes into implementation size, as Theresa mentions. But in line with the VUP has been able to just, due to our program, to support the most vulnerable families in the right time, and also to make sure that they are supporting the right beneficiaries. Because sometimes the people just tend to provide the wrong information regarding the social categorization, but our program has been able to work with the real beneficiaries, and the VUP was really supporting the right beneficiaries, and also have been able just to build the capacity of community-based workers through trainings, monitoring, and the other supervision activities done by the program. From then, we have been able to generate data and evaluate implementation impact, and then we have been able to even to conduct the clinical impact, as you have been many publications being out. Next. So our session, as I said, the parent-child interaction should just emphasize during the active coaching, and then we have to teach the parent how they have to interact with their children. You know that in Rwanda, specifically men, do not understand the importance of just having the closer interaction with the children, because some people think that parenting is just for the women, not for the men. But for us, we have been just thinking that as we can help do our best to increase parent-child interaction, will help always parent to always interact with their children, and also using the local available resources. And this is where we have been able to emphasize on this. In every 15-minute play session, we have to make sure that this is happening at every session being delivered in the home. Next. Further engagement also has been part of our program to make sure that also father are really understanding the importance of just promoting the early childhood development for their children. We really need fathers to be engaged more. So that is where we have been able to make sure that parents are really participating, especially fathers, where we have been flexible in scheduling the session, where our intervention goes to in the home. They have to plan, even consider the time of father can be available to attend the session. So from the completed CRT or cluster randomization trial, on average, fathers completed 7% of the all modules, while 30% did not manage to complete the session. The employment factor was the one to limit the participation of those men, but as the program moved on, we're just trying to study different dynamics, how we can just make sure that at 100% fathers are having participation into our programs. Next. So this is part of the images we're just using to start just showing how roles and responsibilities should be shared among fathers and mothers, especially when it comes to the parenting practices. Next. So our theory of change, it lies into to just have to have the target population, which is most vulnerable families, classified with the one, but also those having children aged between 0 to 36 months, but also we have to assess some of the risk factors that are inhibiting the holistic development of their children, where we have found that there's a limited information about children development needs, limited stimulation, lack of future orientation. And then those risk factors also, we have tried to design the Sugira Muryango component to the fact that we have to respond to those risk factors identified. So when we do the pre-post intervention, what we're just looking, we really want to assess to see the increase in the male and female caregiving engagement in a play. But later on, we have to also do 1-year follow-up intervention outcome to assess improved child physical cognitive development, because because our intervention lasts between 3 to 4 months, we cannot just start seeing whether the child's physical cognitive development has already happened. We have to take like 1 year after the intervention, then we do the assessment again. Currently, we are just moving our theory of change to also cover the longitudinal follow-up study to make sure that we're also assessing the impact of our program toward the school readiness and also improved emotional health. And briefly, this is how our theory of change is really structured to make sure that we're addressing different child development issues emerging here in the country and even in the other country where the program is operating. So this is how it started, just sharing with you the Sugira Muryango research result, where it started with the pilot. We have done with the pilot 1, where the proposed design was done, but with no comparison group. At that time, the delivery of the intervention was done by the bachelor degrees people, and then that we have realized that, okay, the cost of delivery of this intervention could be high if we really want to reach more families. And then at that time, we have again conducted another pilot, which was the second, to assess what if now maybe we use the community lay workers selected by the program, and then we have the staff as supervisors. And those are the papers that has been published. But for the completed cluster randomization design, we have been able to not only test the implementation science by using the community lay workers, but also having to do the 12-month follow-up to see the long-term impact of the program, where the total target household was around 1,049 households. And also from there, we have been able to test the fidelity monitoring and quality improvement loops. The key findings revealed from the published papers, we have just seen some significant improvement when, especially more stimulation in the homes, increase of 1.2 play activities, data diversity consumption, as it is really shown by the size effect that we has been able, the effect size that we have been able to find during the analysis. And also have been seen that there's an increased care seeking for diarrhea, especially to some of the families when the children were sick, they couldn't just even go to look for the health practitioners immediately, but due to our program coaching, they have realized the importance of just reaching to the nearest health facilities or the community health workers on time. So they were just reporting that due to Sugira Muryango, they have at least a good understanding. So on a family level, we have seen the decrease in child exposure to violence, as our program is also preventing violence among intimate partner. And then we have seen the reduced victimization to intimate violence among the mothers, and as it's shown by the odd ratios found, and also decrease in the mother-father showing the depression and anxiety and symptoms. Next. So this is some of the sort of change shared by some of the program beneficiaries, especially on the side of mothers. For example, I'm not just going to read it all, but there's some of the mothers who were really quoting that they are really proud, that saying that their children is sharp due to Sugira Muryango teachings. This is really shows the importance of this program toward those most vulnerable families. And we asked whether she can recommend the program to other families. They say, yes, I can recommend Sugira Muryango to other families. But when we asked the fathers how they really feel about the program, they said that we normally have stress caused by our daily hardship, but through Sugira Muryango, we have learned how to manage stress caused by poverty. Personally, I couldn't hit my wife or my child when I'm stressed. I either go to look my friend or talk to them instead of just shouting at home. And this is part of the strategy we teach to them when we are just addressing the model around the stress management. So we teach them not always to quarrel or just responding with unethical word in front of children, but have to know how to manage those stress. So I think we have a lot of success story around this, but maybe the slide will be shared with you. Next. So, and how can we just make sure that regardless of the work we've been doing, how can we make sure that we're ensuring the sustainment and also quality while working with the government volunteer workforce? As I mentioned before, the program has been working with the community workers selected by the program. Currently, as Theresa mentioned, we have been able to identify to test the play-collaborative implementation science, which use the existing government volunteer workforce to make sure that they were ensuring the sustainability. This one was just part of to say that this play collaborative is part of just ensuring that having the government existing workforce, we hope that even after the end of the program, those trained and empowered volunteers will keep doing the work, even delivering the skills to the other families in the communities not targeted by the program. So next. So as I said, we're just using to make sure that ensuring the quality and also sustainment using this government pre-collaborative approach. We have different implementers and also have funders and also have government partners, but having FXB and Boston College just implementing the program, but having the funder who are really interested into this work to make sure that we can test the implementation science behind the scale up this Sugira Muryango program to most vulnerable families, and also having the government partners like Michel Prof, which is the line ministry where we belong as FXP, and also having the former NCDP and National Commission for Children, which has been merged to date to national child development agencies, and working collaboratively together. This is really allowing us to make sure that we are sharing information around the implementation science and also any challenges behind our implementation. Next. So this pre-collaborative now is really targeting 3 districts, and where we are just operating in Rubavu in the Western Province, and then we have Nyanza in the Southern Province, and then we have Ngoma in the Eastern Province. But we are just targeting the people in Budehewan and also targeting children and also their caregivers. We are just working with the existing government workforce, normally called friend of family and local government stakeholders. Next. So the pre-collaborative, I say, this is a multi-level implementation strategy which engage local and national government and stakeholders to enhance dissemination and sustainability. And then this is just allowing us, to transfer this Sugira Muryango evidence-based practice to the child protection as a workforce, because that is, as we keep working with different government institutions and other civil society like NGOs, to make sure that every people are just participating and just evaluating the implementation behind, and you know how we can just partner together to make sure that we're achieving our goals. And then we are trying to do our best to shift the local ownership to the local partners, because where we want the government to scale up this initiative. That is why we have even formed a government advisory board to always just meet on a regular basis to make sure that we're partnering and also sharing some lessons learned and challenges behind this implementation. Through this Sugira Muryango, we're also doing the cross-site learning, and also where the PDS cycle is really used, we have to learn from the challenges being happening in one maybe district and see whether how the district has managed to handle that challenges, and if that district has been able to find solution that works better, and also we scale that solution again to another district to test it to see whether it can work, and then we continue as such. And also having the cross-team, which is really training hubs and providing supervision. This is really what we are just doing. Next. So this is how the collaborative team is really organized from lower level, from village level up to the national level. And then you see at the cell level, that is where our collaborative team start. And then we have to make sure that the sector, the issues that are not resolved at the sector level is also addressed at the sector and district at the national level, and so on. Next. So as I said, this has been already mentioned, where we have the Rwanda-based expert team, cross-learning within and cross-district regional team, to have a shared charter where different stakeholders will be meeting on a regular basis to discuss around the program implementation science, as we started already having the advisory board meeting on a quarterly basis. And also we'll be just ensuring the quality improvement, as I said, and also having the continuous training opportunity in order to bridge the gap into knowledge and skills around the interventionists. So we are also using technology to support communication, transparency, and also exchange of information on a regular basis. Next. So this is how the program has been doing to respond to COVID-19 impact and innovation. So when in March, the Rwanda recorded the first case, we were in total lockdown. And then that time, most vulnerable families could not be reached, given how people were just not allowed to do some of the activities, social activities, but the home visit activities have already continued. Where they have just said, okay, what if maybe we use the WhatsApp group? We have just created WhatsApp group with staff and other people just to keep just doing the continuous training through that period. We have been doing one-on-one check-in and group chats for additional support. And then the fidelity monitoring and supervision has been continued, where the supervision provided cell mentors has been done, two home visit session per ISO, one planned and one non-planned, to make sure that we are also addressing the weakness and the gap and support for ISO who might have this difficulty to visit those households. And also we have been using the structured fidelity checklist and then to assess interventionist adherence and also to engage them into the quality improvement feedbacks. We have been able to make sure that the mentor record a video of the 15 minutes play session, and then this video is really shared by an external expert for review and just provide input. And then for this, maybe I can just make, we're also helping the government of Rwanda to develop a digital dashboard to correct ECD indicators, especially working with the University of Rwanda, Boston College, and Make Free. This partnership will just help us to correct those ECD indicators and also have at least, because this was a gap in Rwanda, having the database or the digital dashboard that can be helped to just correct information around the ECD indicators, especially targeting children 0 to 36 months, was really a gap, and we really need to address this. So I think the next slide will be just showing how we have also been able to adapt given to COVID impact. And as delivering the home visit program was really a challenge given the COVID-19 challenges, but we have been able to secure the personal protective mask, and also for all beneficiaries, interventionists, and the pre-collaborative members, we have been adapting our training size, because given to put social distancing during the training, we have been reducing the number up to from 15 up to 30, because previously we were planning to have 50 people attending one session, but we have reduced to make sure that we're also respecting the social distancing as the government recommend. We have also been able to update our manual content and then make the hygiene, as this is a cross-cutting theme now, to introduce at the beginning and revisit during each visit. And then we have been able to provide the tip-top materials to all households targeted by the program. And also we have developed some of the messaging materials, and again, recommending the proper use of face masks and social distancing when doing the home visit and reaching those most vulnerable families. We have been able to update our protocol for staff, and if there is a expected case, what they have to do, who they have to call. We have to link with the existing government structure to make sure that that person get the support as soon as possible. In addition, we have been able to add the COVID assessment to caregivers to assess symptoms, treatment, and the general impact of COVID, home life changes, and economic impact to our other measurement that we will be using to assess the impact of and testing the impact of this pre-collaborative science behind our program implementation. I think the next slide will be for Theresa as we move to the conclusion.
Yeah, so I'll just wrap it up quickly so we can take a question or two before we go because we're at time. So you see here that, you know, there's a lot of emerging models that are exciting, but the real science that's needed is to think about how do we scale, how do we sustain quality. We hope the Play Collaborative is a contribution to that. And there are real opportunities for integration of programs like this, home visiting to prevent violence, promote ECD integrated with the poverty reduction strategy, and using a local workforce like the Untitled Muryango. But this takes enabling environments that are policy related, that also involve capacity building and the strengths of local universities and researchers, along with the donors and implementation partners and the government working in harmony. And it's through these strong partnerships that we can really begin to make a difference. So with that, I'll thank you and we can open it up to questions. I also want to put in a shameless plug that we are hiring for this project because it is a big project and you get to work with talent like Jean-Marie and Vincent. So if you're interested, please reach out and we can open it up to questions.
Thank you so much. We do have one question, lots of great supportive comments, a lot of excitement about the model involving fathers and both parents. But one question from our Professor Carolyn Lasorgal, are the home visitors unpaid volunteers? If yes, do you think this is sustainable beyond the life of research projects?
Yeah, and so
Yeah, sure.
I can have my Rwandan colleagues speak to that, but the Untitled Muryango are an existing workforce that already do child protection work. So go ahead, Jean-Marie.
Yeah, sure. I was just going to mention that because we have also to follow what the government is really doing to make sure that we are not just creating conflict, because we, you know, as I mentioned, we're just only working in a third district. And the Untitled Muryango or friend of family are really the existing government workforce that are always providing home visit on a regular basis. And then, as I said, as we said from the start, the government of Rwanda being committed to provide services to its population, where also this volunteerism has been also created as one of the platforms to help the government of Rwanda reaching most vulnerable families, and also helping the government to deliver the services to the neediest people within a shorter time, and also using less resources, but achieve more impact. And we hope this, as we continue, because those volunteerism will just keep working with the government. I know even when we have been signing the MOU, the National Commission for Children were just emphasizing on this single incentive to make sure that we are not just giving them more incentive or tangible things or money in terms of reward, to make sure that if the program closes, they can just feel somehow unmotivated. But this time, we really think that given how we're just moving, we have tried to put some of the motivational kit into the job aid materials, like raincoat, t-shirt, and then just to ensure also the visibility, and also training them. It's also part of the motivation on their side, even to the government side, because while establishing this structure, the training was also a route for the motivation strategy to make sure that having them skilled enough, they will just deliver the work properly.
Thank you so much for that, panelists. This was amazing. A tremendous example of collaboration and innovation, beautiful program design, and wonderful feedback we got from our audience. So thank you for all the supportive comments that you all threw in as we went. As always, the time goes by so very quickly. An hour, we could take many hours, obviously, celebrating this wonderful work. But thanks to all who joined us. Wherever you are in the world, we hope you stay healthy and safe, and we hope to see you again at another Open Classroom very soon. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.